Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about PlayStation 2 emulation with Iris. If you're not familiar with Iris, it's a fairly recent PlayStation 2 emulator. We've talked about it a few times on this channel. Anyways, Iris just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Iris version 0.15 Alpha is the latest release. And they say here, long time no see, a lot has happened since the last release. I've mostly been working on improving overall compatibility, which means 0.15 is our highest compatibility release yet. A lot of components have been improved and fixed. SPU IRQs, VU pipelines, VIF IRQs, and more. I'm really happy with how development has been going, so I decided it was time for a new release. I'll just let the screenshots speak for themselves. So taking a look at the screenshots here, we can see stuff like Gran Turismo 4, Metal Gear Solid 3, Final Fantasy 12, Tekken, Lego Star Wars, Grand Theft Auto, and even more. And if we take a look as well, there's not just screenshots to go off of, there's actually a list here. So they say non-exhaustive list of games that saw major improvements. There's Black, Burnout Series, Point of Impact, Takedown, Dominator, Revenge, etc. Crash Bandicoot, The Wrath of Cortex, Crash Tag Team Racing, Crazy Taxi, Devil May Cry, Gran Turismo 3 and 4. And even more. This is a pretty big update for Iris. And speaking about PlayStation emulation, but going back one generation here from PS2 to PS1 and talking about PS1 emulation with Duckstation. And Duckstation just got a brand new update. Now it's worth noting here that Duckstation is on a rolling release schedule, so this thing gets updated quite frequently and there are a lot of changes in here, some much more recent than others. So taking a look at the changes, and there appear to be a whole bunch of fixes, tweaks, and improvements, including visual improvements. For example here, they say add optional animation of icons in game list. And taking a look at controller stuff, and they say use DualSense mic mute LED for analog mode. So there are a whole bunch of small changes seemingly across the board. There's quite a bit to go through here, and if you're interested and wanted to learn more about it, like everything we talk about, links will be within the GitHub link in the bottom of the description below. I don't hide my sources. And there are a whole bunch of different releases for Duckstation here. Unfortunately, at this point in time, there is no Android update yet. On the Google Play Store, the latest update is May 1st. And speaking about emulation updates, next up we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Citron. And we talked about a massive Citron update just the other day. Now there's a brand new GitHub that has just popped up here. And this one is titled Citron Nightly, and they say unofficial nightly builds of Citron for Windows, Linux, and Android. So based on the information on GitHub, it appears that these updates will happen daily or nightly, and there will be brand new releases pretty much every single day for Citron, unofficial releases. And also may have bugs and issues considering they are nightly and maybe latest cutting edge and bleeding edge kind of stuff that may or may not work. And speaking about arguably experimental stuff, next up we're talking about RedMagic and their upcoming RedMagic 11 Pro series of phones. Now we've talked about these very recently with their very exciting water cooling solution that they've got being implemented in these things. And now we've got more information on that water cooling solution. Taking a look here, this does seem innovative, and I've got still more questions than answers. I'm really curious to see how it holds up with real-world testing. From my understanding, this water cooling is not just a gimmick, but we're going to have to wait and see. It is active cooling. They have a fan. The fan reportedly spins at like 24,000 RPM. And it is IPX8 rated, which means it's kind of waterproof. Now, on a quick side note here, if you're wondering why I'm saying kind of waterproof, it's because I don't know how long this thing can be submerged for, and I don't know how deep it can go. On top of that, we don't know in terms of the dust part of it. It's got the X there in front of the 8, which means there is no dust rating just yet. And I would be very curious to see if this fan does bring in dust and how it's going to be able to be cleaned. But I'm assuming since it is kind of waterproof-ish, the fan should be okay, hopefully. And speaking about hardware, next up here, this is more of just a friendly heads up or a possible warning. But if you've got a Cronus Zen, you may want to pay attention to this if you're playing Battlefield 6. It's being reported that Battlefield 6 is now banning Cronus Zen users. Now, for those who may or may not be aware, the Cronus Zen is a piece of hardware that can be used with consoles and can be used to plug in stuff like mouse and keyboards and also utilize scripting. and that's where the Cronus Zen is highly controversial. Now, I don't think that everybody using a Cronus Zen is necessarily using it for malicious purposes. This is arguably one of the huge benefits to the Cronus Zen, though. But I would say I think a lot of people are using it to use any controller with a console, almost using it like a controller adapter. But anyways, here, the whole scripting piece, the macro piece is probably, I'm pretty sure it's why this thing is banned and people using it are being banned. And speaking about no longer having access to things, next up we're talking about Windows 10 and also Linux. So for those who may or may not be aware, today is the end of Windows 10 as we know it. There are some extended service plans that people can pick up. They're free in certain areas, like I think in the EU. However, the main bulk of Windows 10 is basically done. And if you haven't upgraded to Windows 11 yet, you may want to consider doing so due to the lack of security updates and the potential risk that you may be encountering. And if you can't upgrade to Windows 11 or don't want to, there are some alternatives like Zorin OS. So Zorin OS is a Linux distribution. There's both free and paid versions of it. The free version, I would say, is fine for probably most people. The paid version does offer a few extra bells and whistles, including support. And Zorin OS is made to be a Windows replacement. What I find interesting about Zorin OS is some of their premium desktop environments. I mean, they've got Mac OS-like desktop environments. They've got Windows Classic-like desktop environments, Windows 11-like desktop environments, and Chrome OS, and even more. And I would say this is a very easy distribution to transition to from Windows. Anyway, Zorin OS 18 is just around the corner. The beta is already available, and they've done even more to make it look and feel like maybe something you're familiar with, like Windows. On top of that, there's advanced window tiling, there's OneDrive integration, and even more. And this may be worth something looking into if you're coming from Windows to Linux. Alternatively, if you're looking for a non-Windows-like experience and really wanted to get into Linux, there is stuff out there like Bazite or Linux Mint or Pop OS or Endeavor OS if you really wanted to get into Linux. And speaking about Linux Mint, next up here we're talking about Linux Mint and LMDE, which stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Linux Mint Debian Edition, depending on how you wanted to interpret that. And LMDE 7 GG or Gigi or something else has just released. Anyways, here, this is the Debian Edition version of Linux Mint, which means it's not based on Ubuntu. In my opinion here, LMDE is the future of Linux Mint. Could be wrong with that one. That might be a hot take. We'll have to wait and see. But anyways, here, if you're a fan of Linux Mint, but not a fan of Ubuntu and wished it didn't have Ubuntu elements, well, you may want to check out LMDE. From my understanding here, LMDE 7 is a lot better than LMDE 6. And speaking about stuff getting better, maybe. Next up, we're talking about Capcom. Now, we talk about Capcom quite a bit on this channel. And most recently, we've talked about Capcom's arguably very unpopular decision to charge people for watching the Capcom Cup final. They made it a pay-per-view and are charging $40 for the whole weekend. And that was a very unpopular decision. I mean, we've talked about that in previous videos, and it does seem that Capcom is now reviewing the pricing model. Now, unfortunately, and this is the big unfortunately, I don't know what that means in terms of reviewing it. I don't know if they're going to look at it and say, you know what, looks good to us, we're going to keep it. I don't know if they're going to reduce the price, maybe down to like $25 or $20, or if they're going to remove the pricing entirely. I would highly doubt they'd remove the pricing entirely, but I could see them maybe discounting it. So here's the official statement from Capcom, and let me know your thoughts here. At Tokyo Game Show on September 28th, we announced the introduction of pay-per-view live streaming for both events. We are reviewing pricing and related details. Updated information regarding the pay-per-view broadcast, including final pricing and additional context, will be shared later this month. The way I'm reading it, seeing final pricing here, that doesn't mean free, but we'll have to wait and see. Let me know your thoughts. And speaking about waiting and seeing, next up we're talking about Pokémon. And holy smokes, is this a little bit controversial. So this has been posted up on Gaming Leaks and Rumors, and I've seen it posted throughout the internet. Anyways, it's being reported that Gamefreak's plans up to 2030 have just leaked. Now, I've seen this information posted all over the internet. I mean, I've seen it on Twitter, I've seen it in news articles, I've seen it on stuff like YouTube Shorts and TikToks and even more. I mean, even the legendary One Fluff has seen this information. So here is one of the sources, or one of the more popular spots for this information. It's up on Reset Era, sorry. And this post is from Ethereos. So Ethereos says here, so it happened again. This is a continuation of last year's Terra leak, and now the same hacker has released the rest of the information that they had. And that crazily includes the full calendar of projects Gamefreak is working on. So who knows if this is true, but they say here Gaia in Gen 10, Pokemon Wind Waves releasing in 2026 with DLC in 2027. Ringo is in Legends, Galar will release in 2027. Seed is a new Pokemon game with Kanto, Johto, Koen, and Sinnoh, I might have mispronounced those names, and Gen 11 is releasing in 2030. We're going to have to wait and see if any of this information is true, or maybe it's all made up. We really don't know until this stuff actually releases, or doesn't. This person here says, leak, more Pokemon games are being developed. Go figure. And this person, Seed sounds insane. What are they cooking? And on top of that, there's even more information out there, but who knows? Maybe this stuff is real, maybe it's fake. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts about the possible future of Pokemon. And speaking about arguably controversial stuff, next up we're talking about Final Fantasy Dissidia, which just got a brand new trailer on YouTube. Now before we get into that, how about something non-controversial and maybe comforting? And that is some purrs from the legendary One Fluff. So a lot of people seem to be pretty excited about the recent announcement of Final Fantasy Dissidia Duelim. However, and the big however here, there is a catch. It's for mobile, not console or PC. So the game is headed to Android and iOS in 2026. It's 3v3 battle, and unfortunately we don't have a whole lot of details about everything just yet, but there are still quite a few details about the game out there. It's worth pointing out that if you are interested in this game, closed beta test signups are now available. And if you wanted to learn more about the game, I'd recommend checking out the article up on Gematsu, because they've broken down a lot of the story, the characters, the combat, and all of that. And on a quick side note here, heading back to the YouTube video and taking a look at the comments, I want to say it's a mixed reaction in the comment section, but it does appear it's trending mostly negative. And I am curious if Square Enix ends up disabling comments on the video. Who knows here? Maybe they're not even reading them. This person says, step 1 on how to piss off a fan base. The Dissidia World Kingdom ends with your heart. Square Enix is somehow still stuck in 2015. How much my excitement disappeared when I saw it was for mobile. My concern for Square Enix grows yet again. What are you guys doing with Dissidia, man? And there's even more stuff like this. Can't believe Dissidia has fallen like this. Let me know your thoughts. Are you excited about this game? Are you disappointed, or are you on the fence? And speaking about stuff releasing in the future, next up here we're talking about Nintendo Switch 2 Emulator Oberomi, or something else. I can't quite put my finger on it. Anyways, this is a proof of concept project for a possible Nintendo Switch 2 emulator, and it just got a brand new update. Now, we have talked about this one in the past, and they say here it's a modular and work-in-progress emulator for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's built in Rust and focuses on correctness, clarity, and traceability rather than performance at this stage. The current implementation includes a functioning ARM64 CPU core using dynamic JIT compilation, comprehensive instruction testing, and cross-platform compatibility. And they say here, Oberomi is not yet playable and does not emulate any commercial firmware or games. Anyways, at the time of filming here, version 0.0.1 Dynamic is the latest update. And this one is, well, don't expect a whole lot out of it just yet. I mean, there are no Switch 2 games that have been dumped. There is no Switch 2 firmware out there, and this thing is not fully developed. I would say this is the groundwork for a Switch 2 emulator. But they say we now use Dynamic as a JIT backend for Arch64 instruction translation. macOS support has been greatly improved, including x86, 64, and ARM64 builds. Build scripts and CI workflows were refactored for cross-platform consistency. So I would say that this is kind of a big release for Oberomi, but at the same time, there's not really a whole lot to it as well, considering it doesn't work with the Switch 2 stuff. And I don't necessarily think Nintendo can go after this one in its current state, considering everything here is open source. Nothing seems to be sourced from Nintendo stuff at all. No prod keys, no title keys. It doesn't work with any games. It's just literally a code base. We're going to have to wait and see what happens moving forward here, but I am curious to see what steps are taken. I think if this emulator goes the circumventing TPM method, Nintendo may have a problem with it. But if it doesn't, then Nintendo can't use that TPM argument that they used against stuff like Yuzu. And speaking about waiting and seeing what happens, next up we're kind of talking about the opposite because it's currently in effect. We're talking about Steam's Next Fest, which is now until October 20th. So with Steam Next Fest, there are a whole bunch of demos out there to check out, and I would recommend checking out a bunch of them. Who knows, maybe you'll find your new favorite game. Maybe you'll find a bunch of games you'll want to wishlist and add to your backlog. Who knows? One of the games here, I haven't checked this one out yet, but it's called Second Stellar. And Death on Two Legs 632 commented on my previous video and says, "Not sure if this has been covered before, but it is being developed by the devs of a Terraria mod called The Stars Above." Death on Two Legs 632 goes on to say here they're not related to the devs in any way. They simply love The Stars Above. It's one of their favorite mods for the game and want their game to be seen. And well, here you go. And this is one of the many reasons I encourage comments on my videos, not just for news updates, but also for tips and great information. And who knows, maybe this will become someone's favorite game. Let me know your thoughts. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and the legendary one fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.